Woe is me. Shame and scandal in the family.
Well, greetings from King Edward VII's Hospital for Officers, I think it used to be called. Now it's just King Edward VII's. But it's a really nice hospital, as hospitals go, I have to tell you, and people are really very nice. The most wonderful thing has happened to me today. I have had a bit of a problem, to put it mildly, and I needed to be given something for the problem, and then I need to be given something after the problem was working, for the problem to not become another problem. And because the timing was off slightly, I actually had to endure the most awful, but really wonderful treatment from 3 of the most lovely ladies. One from Bulgaria, one from Pakistan, and one from Poland. And I kept on saying to them, oh, I'm awfully sorry. This is so inelegant. This really shouldn't be happening. And they kept on saying, this is what we're here to do, making me feel better about it. Just lovely. People can be so wonderful. And it's always worth remembering that, because sometimes people can be so dreadful as well, as we are about to discover. Because Andrew M. says, Lady C, I've never voted anything but Labour, but the MPs who are demanding that Keir Starmer strip Peter Mandelson of his peerage are leading me to question, sorry, I need to become more comfortable, to question the wisdom of my stance. What is your take on it? Interesting question. To those of you who don't know what's happening, our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has been called upon by a lot of his Labour MPs to follow the King's example and strip Lord Mandelson of his peerage. I think that's outrageous. Jeffrey Archer, who committed the crime of perjury, he went to prison. He was not stripped of his peerage. Why would anybody want to strip Peter Mandelson of his peerage simply because he believed Jeffrey Epstein's very, very clever cover story, namely that he really hadn't done anything wrong and that he just made a few honest mistakes and that he just had very, shall we say, unusual taste in that he liked girls who were in the first true flush of youth, not underage girls, because remember, he was charged with and admitted to the crime of consorting with an underage prostitute. So the whole thing was massaged away by Jeffrey Epstein's money and clearly political influence. And it was very successfully massaged for several years. Peter Mandelson genuinely believed what an awful lot of people who knew Jeffrey Epstein genuinely believed, that the guy was a bit of a satyr, the guy was a bit of a perv, but he had done nothing illegal, he was definitely not a paedophile, and the banding around of the word paedophile is not only inaccurate, but it adds a dimension to the crimes that the crimes didn't need any embellishment. They were perfectly dreadful enough on their own. So why the mainstream media felt it need to embellish is another matter altogether. But there are so many wheels within wheels in terms of the political influence of Jeffrey Epstein, all of the people involved with him. Remember, most of the very famous people on both sides of the Atlantic were good and close friends of Jeffrey Epstein, even after he had been in prison. And I have to question the bona fides and the malafides of the British media for going with narratives which they have to know are not actually substantiated in fact. The question becomes why? And the reasons are extremely convoluted. Each newspaper group has its own reasons for behaving as it does. And each newspaper group not only has conflicting interests with other newspaper groups who also are involved. I mean, the whole thing is a rabbit warrens of conflict. Let's put it that way. I'm trying to see to what extent I have answered the question. And bear with me, I'm not at my sharpest. I think Keir Starmer has taken the right decision. He's taken the ethical decision. And we need to be governed by politicians who are ethical. Sometimes his ethics are doubtful. In this instance, they are not. And I don't see why I would be criticizing him for exercising correct ethics. You've had a whole load of Labour MPs having a go at Keir Starmer because they want, for their own political reasons, to put banana skins underneath Keir Starmer's feet. Keir Starmer is fighting on many fronts, one of which is for his personal survival as the head of the Labour Party and the Prime Minister. You know, there are two ways of looking at what the King has done. One is that he has got ahead of the narrative and in so doing has been extremely decisive and he has been extremely positive. But there's an alternative view that has equal validity, which is that the king should not have got ahead of this narrative because Andrew has been charged with no crime. How likely it is that he could be charged with a crime might be one thing, but what is very obvious is there is little likelihood that even if he were charged with some crime, he would not be convicted. That's right. There's no evidence against him. Virginia Giuffre's comments are not evidence in a court of law. Also, there's a reason why she was not called as a witness in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. It's because she had no credibility whatsoever. So, many people are now running with the hypothesis that she should be believed totally. And in fact, even her family, her brother and sister-in-law, have been calling out for Andrew to be charged with crimes. What crime did Andrew commit? And also, she's dead. She can't give evidence. But even if she weren't dead, what's her evidence going to be? Jeffrey Epstein gave me $15,000 for saying that I slept with Prince Andrew. How is that evidence? Because it's not evidence. And I'm curious as to why her brother and sister-in-law are so vociferous about Andrew being charged with a crime when he's clearly committed none, except possibly against good taste. But they are very silent on the desire to have their father charged with the crimes of ravishment that she accused him of. Now, the fact of the matter is they're over the statute of limitations. So he couldn't be charged justly with any crime either, which could well be why she never made the accusation earlier when she would have been in a position to have him charged. She chose a time that she knew he couldn't be charged, so she would get the benefit of her claims against her father, while he wouldn't suffer the consequences legally. Do you begin to see how much more mixed this whole situation is than it appears to be on the surface? And as for the claims by various Labour MPs that there should be a police investigation into Andrew calling for his private detective detail to check whether she had a criminal record or not. There's nothing untoward about that. She had charged him with serious crimes, and he had been told that she had a criminal record. In fact, she was criminally investigated. I'm sorry, I'm in pain. She had been criminally investigated, but she didn't have a criminal record. What is wrong with somebody who has been accused by someone of a crime that they maintain they didn't commit, and that she maintains she received a $15,000 reward for. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to understand why, since Andrew had been obviously given sufficiently accurate information as to have been aware of the fact that two young men had made complaints against Virginia Giuffre when she was a teenager, that nearly destroyed their lives. And these, upon investigation, these complaints turned out to be totally unjustified. What's wrong with Andrew asking his security detail to check it out? I don't see anything wrong with it. In fact, I can see something that would be very wrong if they didn't check it out. Because, at the moment, the press and the public want to have it both ways. Andrew should be pilloried for having associated with a Chinese spy. But MI5 and MI6 should not be pilloried for failing to inform him that the man was a spy. Do you see? Who should be giving the information to whom? Surely MI5 and MI6 are the ones who should have been giving the information about possible spies or compromised individuals to a member of the royal family. Surely the royal family was not supposed to be doing its security details job and informing them. Do you begin to see the logic behind a lot of this? According to Andy MacDonald, the Labour MP for Middlesbrough, the stripping of Andrew's titles puts the spotlight back on the Prime Minister's judgment over Lord Mandelson. He told the Telegraph, "The King's done the right thing, and now the Prime Minister must follow suit as night follows day. The King's shown leadership in respect of his own brother, and Keir Starmer should do the same in terms of Peter Mandelson." According to King Johnson, the Labour MP for Liverpool Riverside, Mandelson should be stripped of his peerage. And Sir Chris Bryant, the Labour Trade Minister, said, "I don't think that just having known somebody is an issue," when asked if action should be taken to strip Lord Mandelson of his peerage. And he's absolutely right. Of course he shouldn't be stripped of his peerage. And if he was deceived, he was deceived. I think too many people are jumping on bandwagons, and too many people are turning this into a latter-day Salem witch hunt, or a lynching, a public lynching. I just think it's unbelievable that we can have politicians in this country who don't understand due process and don't understand that when you say somebody is innocent until proven guilty. That's precisely what it means. It doesn't mean that you can have a right to regard them as guilty until they prove to you that they are innocent. We in this country are at the moment in grave danger of overturning an awful lot of the civil liberties which we have fought for over the centuries. We have become a mob, a baying mob of self-righteous and really rather odious, punitive, sanctimonious people. Then, another issue with all of this is that Charles and Camilla are now being praised. I'm sorry, I'm in pain. Charles and Camilla are being praised for having issued the statement that they did, which said that the row over Andrew's contacts with Epstein were affecting Queen Camilla's ability to fulfill her public role insofar as her desire to protect the welfare of women from abuse was concerned. I'm afraid, on no moral or ethical ground, can throwing somebody to the wolves without a fair hearing be regarded as commendable. I'm sorry, it's not. I get why they have done it, and I do not, on the one hand, regard it as commendable, and on the other hand, I regard it as very, shall we say, clever of them. The thing about being a good monarch is that it transcends ordinary, everyday considerations, including party political considerations. The monarchy needs to stand for that which is upright, even when doing so is to its detriment. Now, it's a fine-tuned thing between the King, the Queen, William, Catherine, Sir Clive Alderton, and the other advisors deciding we need to get ahead of this curve. If they have information and access to information that is so damning of Prince Andrew, formerly known as the Duke of York, let's try to catch up with ourselves. I'm sorry, I'm not doing so well. But the only rationale that I can see for that would be justifiable for getting ahead of the curve in this matter the way they have done is if they know that down the line from America there are going to be papers emerging which show that the fact of the matter is Andrew is an ace sleazebag and always was. If that is the case, what they have done is prescient, and it has been necessary, and it is prescient. And therefore, you can say, on some level, it makes sense, and one needs to go along with it and give the royal household the benefit of the doubt. But if that is not the case, the royal household should be defending Andrew. As long as he did nothing that was going to result in criminal charges against him, they need to stand up for him. And the fact that they haven't, if it emerges that there are no just causes in terms of American revelations, I'm afraid a monarchy to survive has to be sufficiently moral as to pass the smell test. Let's put it like that. Because I'll use an example. The security services deemed Andrew a potential risk to national security because of his meetings with Yang Tenbo. But Yang Tenbo had been given right of abode in this country. Yang Tenbo had been passed by the security services in this country as a safe pair of hands. All this chopping and changing does not inspire confidence. When there is no consistency, you know something smells fishy. Princess in Chelsea says, Lady C, I am aware that you knew Helen Broaden, who's been given quite an obituary in the Telegraph. I'd love it if you could comment on her life and death. And please do as you encourage others to do when they attend your shows. And please be as indiscreet as possible. This is obvious as somebody who has been to my show, because I do say to people, please feel free to ask anything that you want and be as indiscreet as possible. So I'm sorry, I'm going to need to hike myself up again. I have to keep on the move to the extent that I can, since I can't move. It's ridiculous. Helen Broaden was the youngest woman to be called to the bar in this country. I knew her slightly. I didn't know her well. I first met her at Princess Katerina of Yugoslavia and Sir Desmond de Silva's house on Sydney Street. I was friendly with her former husband, Sir Evelyn Delves-Broughton, and with his last wife, Rona Lady Delves-Broughton, who is a very eminent figure at Lloyd's. Helen was very, very fine and aristocratic looking. She was actually born into a very smart family. She was, as Helen Shaw, she made her debut with really rather smart people, and she continued on the trajectory of smartness. And incidentally, I'm using the word smart in the English meaning of it, not the American. Smart being chic, socially desirable, attractive. Well, Helen and Evelyn had 4 children, 2 girls, then a son, then, sorry, my nose is itching me. This time it's genuinely itching me. They had 2 sons, a little boy whose name was John Evelyn, and he drowned when he was very young. I think he was 2 at the time. Helen had asked her elder daughter, Isabella, to take care of the child, and it seems to have choked on a biscuit and died as a result of it. And Isabella, who was always very vague, hadn't even noticed. Isabella, incidentally, became known as Isabella Blow, the great fashionista. And one of Helen's other daughters, Julia, became Lady Rausin. She was married to Hans Rausin and died about a year ago of melanoma. Helen was colder than ice, perfectly charming, perfectly pleasant, but absolutely cold. When she was leaving their father, she lined the girls up and shook their hands. Sorry. She also was quite the girl because Helen was hoping to marry Charles St. Albans, the present Duke's father. He was married to a French woman called Suzanne, who refused to give him a divorce. And in those days, people didn't live together the way they do now. So they didn't live together. They simply kept on conducting this affair. And Evelyn caught them in flagrante delicto. And Helen, quick as a flash, said to Evelyn, "Oh, Evelyn, it's not what you think it is. Charles and I are starting a nudists colony. And as long as it suited him to buy that lie, he bought it. And when it stopped suiting him, he simply used it." Evelyn was a very nice and honourable man. He settled money on his daughters. Evelyn had no great fortune. People thought that because the movie Black Mischief was made about the family, and because they had a stately home in the north of England, that they were rich, but they weren't. Evelyn sold the land on the estate so that he would be able to pay off Helen when they wanted a divorce. Well, she got paid off. And his next wife bought the land back. Also, his father, Sir Jock Jelfs Broughton, about whom White Mischief was made. You know, the movie about the famous murder of the Earl of Errol in Kenya in 1941. And Sir Jock was charged with the murder. But it was his wife who subsequently became Diana Lady Delamere. She's the one who killed Jos Errol, if I said Jock, which I think I did. I'm sorry, I meant to say Jos. Jos Errol. And she shot him and killed him because he was refusing to marry her. Why? Because as long as he thought that Evelyn, when he gave them a divorce, would give her enough money to live well, he was all for the marriage. But when he discovered that Evelyn had no intention of giving a penny, all of a sudden, the relationship didn't become so desirable. So I hope that answers the question about Helen Lady Jelfs Broughton. She has one daughter remaining, Lavinia Verney. The family's had a whole load of tragedy. Isabella dispatched herself with paraquat. Julia died of melanoma. And Lavinia's husband was on a verge on the side of the road, and a huge articulated lorry ploughed into him, and that was him no more. She was very young at the time. So the family has had its share of misfortune, one way or the other. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in, so I will know what you'd like us to be speaking about. Okay, thank you so much. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you get a like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.